don't even like the feeling of being high. I just like the possibility of being different. Because when I get high, I'm constantly trying to not be high by like drinking coffee. And I realize I don't want to be high or drunk. I just want to be not me, not here right now. And that's like the probably the biggest truth of like my sobriety is that I'm just so miserable in the me that I exist in that I want the power to alter it, even if that power isn't pleasant. Like being stoned isn't pleasant, being drunk isn't pleasant.
Margaret Cho is here. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for coming to do the podcast.
Thank you. I've been reading your book. I'm right after you went to your first meeting. I'm right at where you took your test to whether or not you're an alcoholic, and it was like, yeah, I mean, it is that feeling of, I'm gonna try to not answer these questions like, "Oh, this doesn't apply to me. This doesn't apply to me. This doesn't apply to me," because I did the same thing, and Mike also took me to my first AA meeting.
He did?
Yeah. He took me in 1996 to a big book study in, Hollywood. It was on Hollywood and Gardner. He was my first experience. I didn't even know what Alcoholics Anonymous was, and, I wish I had stayed. If I had stayed, I would have 30 years of sobriety, but I have 10, which is okay. It's
That's
okay.
great. That's a
So,
long
yeah,
time.
but I really love your book. I think it's so my story too. You know, my entry point is probably food, but I love pot. I do love pot. I even think I have very vivid dreams now of smoking pot. I'm not going to, but it's one of those things that's like it's a dangerous thing for me to even like think about. But like because it's like the way that it's so legalized now and everybody's doing it, but I know it's not it's not worth it. It's not good, but I
It
like it.
it seems so harmless, and
Yeah.
even for me, I don't even like the feeling of being high, but I'll do it. Like, when I was doing it, I wouldn't not do it if it was offered to me, but I understand what you're saying. I mean, I get a little bit, hashtag triggered when people are, just taking a gummy, or I know people who are sober, but, like, sometimes they take a gummy, and I always go like, I'm not a person who can do sometimes.
No, and I also don't even like the feeling of being high. I just like the possibility of being different. Because when I get high, I'm constantly trying to not be high by like drinking coffee and
Same.
like wake up, you know? And like if I take a gummy or something or edible to go to sleep, in the morning I can't wake up. Like I'm just trying, like, so even if I'm always trying to escape the feeling, even if I am high. I'm, like, always trying to sober up, so it's like, what is the point? And I realize I don't wanna be high or drunk, I just wanna be not me, not here right now. And that's, like, the probably the biggest truth of, like, my sobriety is that, I'm just so miserable in the me that I exist in, that I want the power to alter it, even if that power isn't pleasant. Like, being stoned isn't pleasant, being drunk isn't pleasant. Or it was in very limited moments when and I do love a Xanax. I do.
Same.
I love but I think if anything, like, I was always chasing it, but I only love Xanax because it would change the feeling of being drunk. Like, I just want change. And I think, that's the dangerous part of it. I just wanna feel different. And but it's good to know that.
Do you think that you've felt that way since you were a kid? Because I know
Yes.
I have.
Yes. Yeah, that's why food made such an impact because, food was like the immediate feeling, "Oh, I'm different. Everything is different." Also, my mother has an eating disorder, she still does, and so, um, she would always value the fact that I was so thin. I was like a super skinny child, and she would just say, "Oh, you can eat anything. You're so lucky you can eat anything. You should just eat and eat." She almost, like, would feed me to feed herself because she went on super restrictive diets, and then so she would have this, like, thing about how wonderful it was that I could eat, and then I got this idea, "Oh, I can eat anything and not get fat," which was totally not true. So I was so miserable being fat like a fat teenager that I loved speed. I loved it was like Crank back then, and so or mini thins that you would get at the, um, 7-Eleven, trucker speed or whatever.
Yeah,
Those kind
we were all, Dexatrim.
Yeah, I love that stuff. I love that stuff. So, I, definitely have so much of my like you, it is like the food gave me the head start into the idea of, like, I just wanna feel changed, I wanna feel different, and that sugar high, the feeling of things in my mouth, like, I loved all that. So, I definitely have had an EG, I mean, I still do, I think, to Um, not a detrimental degree because I'm so old now, like, it matters very little how I look, but, it is it exists, it's there.
I think it's something that you can't ever 100% get rid of. Everybody that I know that has that same experience that, I still struggle with, the sugar thing. That was my first addiction. That was the first thing that helped me feel different, change, you know, and, loved it like a drug right from the beginning, and I still, like, go through my phases where I can't get enough.
Yeah. It is, like, the feeling of being different and the feeling of, like, the promise of it just existing, like, I just need to have, um, chocolate, I need to have things I, like, hoard it now, so I need to have it, like, in my refrigerator, I need to have it, like, in my house, I can't leave the Cheesecake Factory without taking cheesecake with me, like, I have to have a pie, but I really try to control how I eat it, so I'm not like I used to be really restrictive, like, I used to be in HOW,
Mhm.
which is, it's like where you really control your food and it's like a 12-step group just for food, but they give you a meal plan. Have you done HOW?
I think I might have done it. I went to OA when I was, like, 21 to try to get over bulimia, and, it helped, but it also made me and this relates to how it made me more focused. If I could have been more focused, I became even more perfectionist about and it made it worse.
Mhm.
I did get over it early on, but therapy, kind of reading some spiritual sort of books, even though I'm not that spiritual, but, I sort of was able to break through and just let it was really the purging that was the issue. Once I got over it's a whole long story, but, I found that being on restrictive I don't like the feeling of being more obsessed with what I'm eating or not eating.
Yeah.
I know that it helps because it's like then you're totally abstinent from certain foods and that for a lot of people it helps them then not think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I, was at in OA. I think OA really helped me and how really helped me, but it was so restrictive, and it also took me away from the problem that was really destructive, which was alcoholism, and drug addiction. Like, mine got super serious, and, I had to be, put away. I went to rehab for almost 2 years.
You
So
did? Tell me about
yeah.
that. What
I
led
went
up to
to,
that?
well, I was kidnapped by my best friends who and my manager, and, they took me to, their house, my manager's house, and it was all of my friends there crying with letters, just saying, "You're gonna die," and they were right. They were right, and I knew it, and this was 10 years ago, and they took me, to a facility, a really fancy rehab, which used to be Rock Hudson's house on the top of Mulholland. It was beautiful, and I was there with, a lot of famous people, nepo babies, um, very wealthy. It was a very expensive place. And, a lot of them died. And it was like, "Oh my god, this is serious stuff." Like, so I just stayed there and I ended up just living there for 2 years because I had a crazy boyfriend who was, not drinking, but not sober. And he was always encouraging my drinking because it kept me really, malleable. And so, he had, been at my house. He wouldn't leave. Um, there was a, eviction notice put up on my house. The sheriff came, he wouldn't leave. He was, like, squatting, and they turned off the water, they turned off the electricity, he still wouldn't leave. Um, and, finally, the sheriff came with guns drawn to get him out, and they, like, opened the doors and, like, every he they were, like, going through with guns drawn trying to find him, and he had taken a mannequin and laid it in our bed with my wig, my clothes laid down, and the police thought it was my dead body. They didn't know, like, there what was going on, and he was gone, and I have, seen him once at a show in San Francisco where he came. He's like, whenever I do a show, they put his photos out, "Don't let this person in no matter what," and he got in. He just snuck in, and, my, manager came out and confronted him and got him out, but, like, I didn't have a place to live, so I was like and I was being stalked by this and he was homeless, and he was, like, very you know, he was he had nothing to live for, so he would probably have killed me. I'm sure he would have killed me. Um, he did try to kill himself a number of times when we were together. That's how you know a man is gonna kill you if they don't have anything to lose, and a suicide threat is pretty much a homicide threat, I think. So, I needed to heal from the abuse. I needed to have a place to live, have a place to hide, because the place was, like, really tight security. Um, so, I ended up staying there for 2 years, which was really
It sounds like
a
a
benefit.
hard circumstance, though, to get sober.
Yeah,
Like, you got so much other stuff going on. It's hard enough to quit doing something that you think makes you feel better.
totally.
Do
'Cause
you
I
think
but
it
I
was
was yes. Yeah, well, I was detoxing from alcohol, opiates, benzodiazepines, kratom, an eating disorder, Adderall, um, the psychological experience of being with an abusive partner for about 3 years at that point. And, just this feeling of, like, I don't even know who I am without these substances. I don't know who I am without substance abuse, and I don't know who I am without doing comedy. 'Cause for, a lot of that time, I didn't do any shows. So it was very weird, and then after about 3 months, I thought, "Oh, I should just do comedy," and so I started to do spots at night. I would do, like, all my groups and cooking classes and eating disorder classes and, like, harm reduction, all this kinda stuff during the day, and then we go to a meeting, and then I would go do a set at the Comedy Store. They would take give me a bodyguard, pretty much and a sober companion, all rolled into one, some guy, and they would take me to, the Comedy Store, and I would do sets, and I realized, "Oh, this is my life's purpose." Like, I meant to do this, and I really do love to do this, and I should do this, and I, um, would do really well, or I would bomb, or whatever the reactions were kind of mixed because I was kind of all over the place, but I was really falling in love with it again, and I realized, "Oh, this is what I'm going to do to build myself back up." Not necessarily, like, thinking that my career I didn't have real career aspirations around it. I just had, like, "Oh, I just really enjoyed doing this, and I forgot how much I enjoyed it."
Do you think that even when you were at the height of doing all these substances, and I'm going back to, like, how we started this talk, do you think there was still a part of you that was like, "Not that bad"?
Yeah, totally. I'm like, not that because I was still on the road, I was still doing shows, I was still kinda, like, out there doing stuff, and I was doing these drugs because I wanted to be different, and then I was with this guy, like, he made himself my road manager. So and he did a terrible job at it, and, he would also insist on first class accommodations, first class tickets, like, to travel, and which I didn't even do. So I had to like upgrade all of like our travel arrangements to suit this homeless person who's like demanding practically a private jet. Like, it was so crazy, and I'm like was so scared of him, and like I just sick of arguing that I would just do whatever he said. And so we would do these shows, and I was also like I was doing drugs and drinking in order to escape from him because he would always be screaming or crying. Like he would just cry all the time. The one time I went and I did a film without him, I went to do a shoot on location, and I was just, like, putting my foot down, like, "I'm not paying for you to come on this, like, trip, like, there's no reason for you to be there. I wanna just go," and I went, and he would send me photos of a collection of pills in his hand and then turn off his phone, so I thought that he had committed suicide, but I couldn't find out where his body was because I had a house in San Francisco, I had a house in LA, I wasn't sure which house he went to. So, like, if I'm calling 911, I don't know where he is, so it just seemed crazy, and, yeah, he would, like, put pills in his hand, take a picture of it, and then go offline for days. So I'm, like, on this shoot, this movie, and I'm like, I can't concentrate because 'cause I'm thinking, like, this person's dead, and Corinne Bailey Rae, who was a beautiful soul singer, her husband had died, of a drug overdose, and she left show business.
Oh, I
Like,
didn't know that.
she just left, like, and I
She's the girl, put your records on.
yeah, beautiful singer, and you just never heard from her again, and I was like, "Oh, that's gonna be me." Because when something happens to your man, you're to blame, and I that kind of held me in, like we had a maybe an okay relationship for, like, 2 months in the beginning, and but then it became, "I'm gonna commit suicide, so you better stay with me." And then I was like it was like a gun to my head for the whole time, and, I he would, do these things where he would pack all of his stuff to leave, like, he couldn't stand me anymore, and he would be almost at the door, and then he would lay down, and I have this floor that's, like, concrete, and he would lay down, and he would bang his head so hard on the ground that I thought, "Oh, people are gonna think that I bludgeoned him to death," because it was, like, terrifying how hard he could bang his head on this concrete. Um, so he was a very disturbed person, but that was also kind of a drug because it was like, if you wanna feel different, an abusive person is gonna make you feel really different. And, that was probably the most dangerous part of my addiction is the thing about abusive people, because even after I got sober and I had been in this facility for almost 2 years, the first relationship I got in was another incredibly abusive person, and this person was in AA. He had double digit sobriety and was somebody that you would never suspect to be abusive. He was like a spiritual guy, a big meditator, yoga teacher, all this stuff.
Well, look at
It,
Russell Brand.
yeah, he was like that. He was incredibly abusive, psychologically abusive. Um, also forced me to take him on the road with high end accommodations. I don't know what it is with these guys. They come from like he was like living in a studio apartment, like a not even like a studio apartment, like a SRO, like a single room occupancy. Um, so not even a studio, like when you're homeless and then you get one room. That was like I went like my last boyfriend was homeless. Here I had a guy with one room. And yeah, he demanded so much of me, and I tend to fall into these relationships where I want to be different.
Did you
And
get out of that one quicker?
I got out of that one a little bit quicker, and he was not because he wasn't, using drugs or drinking like my other boyfriend, who that his drug wasn't really drug, it was like drugs, it was control, but this other guy, he was sober, he was just an asshole. So, I was able to get out of that one after, like, 2 years, but, like, only after I did a show in England, I did a tour and I brought him, he was such a nightmare the whole time, and, he opened for me, and, I had a critic came to review the show, and the critic was so disgusted by him, like his sexism, his just bad comedy, that he, couldn't enjoy mine. Like, he was a big fan of mine, but he had to give the show a bad review because this guy was so bad. And he knows that he's my boyfriend, and he was, like, just so disgusted that I made this choice of being with this person. And it was a real wake-up call, like, "Oh my god, like, am I willing to just, like, throw everything out because of this person who does make me feel legitimately different because he's abusing me every day? Why do I accept this?" And it is, like, so weird when you get into abusive relationships how much of an addiction it is. And, so now I kind of have looked at my life of, like, I really don't allow anybody to get remotely close. I sort of look at people as all being hobosexuals, that they're all gonna try to move in, and I'm very guarded, which, you know, may be best, but I don't miss it either because I'm kinda like I'm in menopause, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah, that feeling of, like, chasing that feeling of wanting to be different can follow you into sobriety.
Oh, for sure. Let me ask you this. Your friends, especially your friends that were really worried for your life and got you to go to rehab, did the intervention, uh, which really sounds like from the show Intervention, it sounds
It
like
is.
there's a lot of people here that love you like crazy and just want you to get
Totally,
better.
yeah. It's Jeff Van Vonderen, who
Yeah.
went out, that guy.
He did?
He
Like
relapsed. I
recently?
think he's back. No, I think he relapsed, like, during the course of the show. Like, he had, like, 30 years of sobriety or something, and then, like, relapsed, and then came back, which I think is, like, that's amazing. Like, well, great for it to come back, but it also shows you're not safe even if you have many, many years of sobriety. You can have a lot of years, but the thing is the disease exists within us, and it can take a lot of different forms. So,
Before 10 years ago, had you had any periods of sobriety? I feel like you had.
yeah. Yeah, I had, when I was with Mike, when Mike took me to that meeting, I was sober for 7 years, and then
Okay.
I had after that, I had intermittently, like, brief times of sobriety and, brief kind of moments of, like, "I gotta stop, like, this is bad." And, um, I was married, I got married, and um I was sort of like playing at, like, being a little bit like the sort of voice of reason because my husband liked to drink a bit, and could get out of hand. He would have some problems, and I would just be like, "Well, be the like, well, I was sober for 7 years, so I know the sign," so I like to be like telling him what to do, but also hiding the fact that I was way worse than he was. Um, but it's like I never really got into it. Like, now I really do the thing. Now I'm very entrenched in wanting to be sober and, like, living it. But, for 13 years, I was just kind of flailing around and, getting a little bit here, a little bit there, but not in a serious way, more pretending.
So you had gone to the meeting with Mike. So we're referring to my book. I have a chapter about a friend that I had, that Margaret was friends with too, who I would look at, even though we were young at the time, I would look at and go, that's an alcoholic. Like,
Yeah,
that's a
because he's
person whose
Goldilocks.
personality changes after 2 drinks. Like,
Yeah,
I
totally. You were
I'm
so
not like
right.
that.
You're so right when you describe I mean, I love your book because you describe things so beautifully and simply. And
You.
I really responded to your words like, "Oh my god, this is my life." Like, watching him, it would be different. Like, he would speak louder, and there was a underlying threat in the way that his energy was. And, I always thought he was such a beautiful guy, but there was something 'cause he was like, from a rich family, so he's got that sort of billionaire boys club
Yes.
vibe. And, like, I, like, went to his family in Florida, like, his sister hated me. Think bec
She didn't like me either.
she's mean, she did not like girls around him, and 'cause they were, like, totally, what the shards. Like,
Yes.
it's that kind of vibe, it's so the shards, it's very on FX, just under the water, like, and, So there was that thing where he would drink 2 drinks and then he was like the preppy murderer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it was like that gorgeous guy that would, like, he would be really fun, and then it would just, like then he'd be very grandiose, and his personality would expand, and it would got kinda, like, little bit, "Uh-oh, he's a little scary." And, yeah, his drinking and crack addiction just was, like, get got crazy, and he would just fall asleep in people's cars, like Goldilocks, that's what they called him. Goldilocks, because he would fall asleep where it was just right.
He let me write that, so that's in that chapter of the book, and the reason and I sent him that chapter, and I was like, "Hey, uh, I had changed his name." This was before whatever, and it was because I realized after I wrote it when I write, and I'm sure you're the same way, I have to write like no one's ever gonna read it. I have to write like
Of
I'm writing
course.
in my diary.
Yeah, of
So,
course.
I write that chapter, and then I was like, he's gonna need to approve this," because it's the point of it wasn't to, like, talk about how bad someone else was, it was to talk about how I constantly compared myself and was like, I'm so much better." And that he was trying to be sober, and he took me to a meeting, and I spent the whole time in the meeting going, "I feel so sorry for these people." Like,
Yeah.
it sucks to be like, "Wow, they can never drink again." I was very
Yeah.
judgmental, and then the whole point of it is that I take the "Are you an alcoholic?" quiz, and I answered, like, 19 out of 20, "Yes." But I'm still managed to go, there's a re"
Totally.
I rationalize
Totally.
all of it, but when I sent him the chapter, I mean, he laughed and he was like, "This is hilarious, and you can actually use my name, I don't care," 'cause,
Yeah.
he was
He's
working on
through
himself.
it. He's lived, and he's one of those people, like, I just think it's so weird when people can walk it off. Like, he had such a devastating addiction, and he just kinda walked it off. Like, it's just like, "Okay,
Well, I
I'm
think
good."
he always struggled, and I think that his struggle was a different kind of struggle because it was pretty obvious. I used to sometimes be jealous that it's pretty obvious if you go out drinking and that leads you to do crack and get in like a fight with a drug dealer on the street. Like I never had any of that. So
Yeah.
it was so much
Yeah.
easier for me to go, I don't know.
Justify. To justify, like, "Well, I don't do that. Like, I'm not that bad. Like, I'm not doing that." And I think for him, like, he lived such a life of privilege. There was something about him that felt like he was just unstoppable, invincible, and that's why he could go so low. Also, crack takes you down. It's just a drug that just it flattens any possibility of, like, a real sort of life. Whereas if you're just drinking and doing, like, little bit of benzos here and there, you can kinda justify it like it's mother's little helper. There's a lot of ways that alcoholism in women can be justified. Like, we can just go, "Mm, it's not that bad." It's very ladylike.
But did you feel like because for me, it's like I was doing this I seem pretty functional. I mean, I was very functional, but like if I say had a really a struggle with headaches and even though I was on migraine medication, I talked my doctor into giving me something for breakthrough pain. And if I could get my hands on like 100 Vicodin, I could take them all in like a few days. And
Totally.
there's a part of my brain that was like, "That's fucked up." Like,
Yeah.
that's not normal. Cause and it's the like, I couldn't tell anybody that, but I would still somehow justify it and just go, "Well, it's like potato chips for me." Like, "Well, just don't do that again." As soon as I'm done with the Vicodin, with some point, I'd be, like, taking them even more because I'd be like, "I just need to get rid of them.
Right.
Not gonna throw them out, but, like, I just
No,
need to go through them,
you
and then
gotta get yeah.
I will not try to get another prescription for them. Like, did you feel like that too? Like, I'm
Yep.
doing these things that are pretty alcoholic, drug addicty behavior, but I can still it's still somehow I can convince myself it's a bit ladylike.
Totally. Like, I would think, like, well, it's not that bad because 'cause I'm not doing heroin, I'm not doing heroin, I'm not doing OxyContin. I mean, I'm not doing, these things, like, I could justify it, and then I would also drug switch because I was doing opiates to the point like Vicodins and Norcos to the point where I was getting dope sick when I didn't have it. So that's what Kratom came in. Kratom is like the worst. Kratom is like a legal drug that you can get at the gas station now. But back then it was just powder that you would buy online. It was so gross. But it would bind to your opiate receptors and keep you from getting dope sick. But the problem is that you became addicted to that. And so I would just sort of drug switch between opiates and kratom. And then, on top of that, it was Adderall and benzodiazepines and then alcohol constantly. And then marijuana, of course. So that there was the amount of substances I was like doing was just so unpredictable. And just as I was vomiting all the time because the kratom had to be choked down in huge like clumps of powder. It was really gross. Now you can just get it at a shot, like a 5-hour energy at a gas station. And people are going like really hard, getting super addicted, having to go to rehab for that.
Yeah, we have a coupon code, so you can check that at the end of the
I can't believe it's legal. It'll probably change, but yeah, people are getting super strung out.
I've heard about that, and I've heard it's kind of getting bigger with young people, which
Yeah.
is scary.
Yeah, because you don't have to be any age to buy it, I don't think. I mean, it is really super addictive.
So was it affecting like, you're doing all these drugs, but you're kind of convincing yourself "I'm just have to do this because to not feel the effects of this." Was it affecting your career,
Yeah,
performance? How was that
yeah.
going?
I mean, I could just barely function. Like, I was a couple of shows, I'd have to bring a bucket on stage to vomit in. Like, or I'd have to cancel a show, like, between the first and second show. I have to cancel the second show because I was just so sick. And, like, I mean, it was like you're barely hanging on, like, physically. I mean, but being a comic on the road is a sort of, like, life that is geared towards doing drugs because you have so many long periods of free time that you just have to, go into another city, and I would always have stuff on me, and there's always alcohol, and as long as you could go up there and stand up there for an hour twice a night, you were good. So, normally, I could still do the shows, but I just looked really physically really bad. I wasn't booking any acting stuff. I, was just traveling around doing the road and, I didn't really write that much. Like, I thought that being high and drunk would help me be, like, an incredibly creative person. For some reason, I thought that was gonna help me be good, and it didn't. So I would just kinda do the same things all the time, and, um, I was just getting really bad, and, I did a show. I was so fucked up, and it got on TMZ, and people were screaming at me, and the audience was screaming at me, and then, um later, I went back with Jerry Seinfeld. We were doing, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, and we invited the same audience to come and talk to me about it. And, one person was a really big fan, and she was a doctor, and she was crying because she was like, "I saw you after the show, and you looked like you were gonna die. And the people that were with you, they were killing you." 'Cause the people that were with me, with my homeless ex-boyfriend and another guy who I got drugs from. So and she was right. And I had been staying, like, in the same hotel that Greg Giraldo died in. Like, all this stuff was like, "I'm gonna die. Like, I'm definitely gonna die." And, yeah, like, when I saw it affect her so much, and she's just somebody that loved my comedy and had been coming to see me, and just seeing me in that state was so terrifying to her, like, it just really kind of woke me up. And, I got sober, like, a couple of weeks after that. But the intervention was what sort of did it. That was one of the things that made me think, "Oh, I better stop doing this, or at least get away from this guy." And then the intervention happened
What did
right after that.
Seinfeld say? That doesn't sound like a really hilarious episode.
He was great. I mean, he was really like, because 'cause he's been such a supportive person to me since I was a teenager, so I was really, um, grateful to him, you know, to kind of like we talked about it. Like, we talked about the TMZ thing, and we talked about, well, maybe this because he wanted me to do Comedians in Cars because he's always loved me. So I thought, well, let's do it. And why don't we? I suggested that we go back and bring that audience back to that club, and let's talk to them and see how and do another show. Like, so then we had the same audience, and then I did a show sober, and then he performed, and of course he killed, and it was really great. But it was like, this great redemption at once, sort of a redemption. I think that was sort of the beginning of me starting to feel a little bit like maybe I need to change my life, and yeah, getting sober after that was really, really good.
So you're in the rehab for a couple years, which is a long time. You come out, and then was it hard to remain sober? Did you talk about sobriety to
Yeah,
people? Were your friends were still around you?
yeah,
How was it to get back into doing shows? I know for me, when I got sober, I was like, how am I gonna okay, I know people who are like drug addicts, alcoholics, but they're like, I never perform high. And I get it. For me, I was like, I do not like to perform ever without at least a couple glasses of wine, maybe a half a Xanax in me. I just was like, I mean, I don't know how people do it. How do you have to take the edge off a little bit. I felt so much funnier and more relaxed. So I remember the first time I ever had to perform completely sober, I was like, how is this gonna go? I mean, I felt very naked. Did you have any
yeah.
issues like that?
Well, I'm one of the people that has to perform sober. Even if I'm, like, drinking and doing drugs, I have to, like, let that from, like, 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock, can't do anything because I need that time to just drink coffee and come back to my senses because in the scope of, like, all my years doing comedy, I was never really be able to do it compromised. Like, I have to have all my wits about me, so being sober really helped my comedy because that's the way that I'd always been sort of used to doing it and supposed to do it. So, doing shows was not the issue. Um, like, after all that time in rehab and then going to meetings and going to being entrenched in sobriety, and even though, like, I was dating somebody who was in sobriety, even though he was abusive, um, doing drugs or drinking wasn't the issue. It was more, about, like, trying to find ways to just manage feeling peaceful and feeling like everything was gonna be okay, and I mean, I really, hurt myself by getting into an abusive relationship kind of right in that process of being getting sober. So that sort of hurt me a little bit, not in terms of like whether I was going to drink or not or do drugs or not. It was more the threat was more about how am I going to find a place of peace? And I think that's where I really got more into meditation. So now I'm a pretty I'm really devoted to it and I do it about an hour every day and it's built up
Wow.
over time, which is good. It's really helped me because it's like that's a way that I can shut it down, like shut all this sort of craziness down and I can just breathe. And I didn't want to be a big meditator because the guy that I was with who was abusive would meditate twice a day in the closet for 45 minutes at a time. Um,
Was it Russell Brand?
yes. And but if I made a noise, he would start screaming in the middle of his meditation. So I was like, that's not real. Like, but he acted like this weird holy man, like going off to India to stay in like some place where he would not speak for 10 days. One of those kind of weird idiots. So I just sort of like that meditation is not going to help me because look at this guy and he doesn't help him at all. But when I started to take it super seriously, it really did help. And now it's a really important part of my life. Um, and I just do it because my brain won't stop moving.
So what else do you do now to stay sober? You said you're more into your sobriety. Do you go to meetings?
Yeah.
Have you found you okay,
Yeah.
so you do the
I
whole
have,
thing.
I do the whole thing. My sponsor's a comedian. My I have an amazing sponsee set, really grade A, like top tier students, like amazing people. I have a lot of, I have a lot of activity, that I do within recovery and also a little bit outside. Like I participate in a podcast called Dopey, which
Oh,
is a
I know
really,
that podcast,
it's
yeah.
a great podcast. And I just wrote a song called Grippy Sock Vacation, which is about my time in rehab that it was actually started as a dopey song because a lot of people that are on the podcast contribute music. So I've contributed music to it. I've been on it several times and I'm a big champion of that podcast. But it's like one of the things of it, it's the attitude of being able to laugh at addiction in the face of it killing us. Like, it's really powerful to laugh at it because that's also my most powerful tool in life is laughter and humor. Um, and so to weaponize that against the most difficult challenges in life is really amazing and really fun. So I love that podcast and what it's been able to do for me. Um, the majority of my friends are sober. In fact, I think, yeah, I can't even think of people who that are really close to me that aren't. But yeah, I'm engaging in sobriety every day to some extent. Whether it's through program or different kinds of things. I do a lot of speaking because it's a little wing of my performance. I'm speaking at Pacific Group tomorrow,
Oh,
which is
wow.
that's a challenging thing for me because Pacific Group is very like you have to wear a suit, you cannot use profanity, and in my shares, I'm so profane because
Same.
the disease is profane. Yeah.
And a
Do
lot
you
of
go to
times it's in a church, so then you're
Yeah,
like, "Oh," I have to a
the
lot of times
worst.
go, "Sorry." Yeah.
Do you go to meetings and stuff?
Yeah,
I love Zoom.
I do too, although, my brain is very busy. If I'm on a Zoom meeting, I will, like, play a game on my phone at the same time, which I try to convince myself is just helps me concentrate better, but I know it probably doesn't.
If you're there, it doesn't matter. Like, if you're physically there, I think it's just even, if it's just in your ear, just like it whatever we do to maintain this, it's helpful.
I mean, for me, the thing that got me to keep coming back, well, desperation, that was the number 1 thing, but the number 2 thing was that what I thought the program would be was really boring people who were just talking in slogans, and I kinda wanna know part of that. The thing that really helped me was going to meetings where people were genuinely being funny, like, where I would have a belly laugh,
Mhm.
and I think that eventually, because I didn't write my book until I was, like, 13. I have 17 years sobriety now. From the time I started writing the book to it coming anyway, the point is I was like, there's not enough stuff that really focuses on, like, let's make fun of ourselves.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
everybody is so a lot of people are very earnest outside of meetings. Do you know what I mean? When we
Yeah.
talk that's why a podcast that's like we can make fun of it a little bit, we can have some laughs, like, it doesn't have to be so serious. That's the
Mhm.
thing that keeps me in, I think, long-term sobriety.
Yeah. Me too. I agree. I mean, I love your book because it is, like, so funny because it's just so, like, you're talking about all of these things with such a real, like, thing, like, it's embarrassing, but it's also not, like, it's because it's just, like, looking back, and I think what struck me is about how, like, when I think it's your sister-in-law when you're, like she said, "I'm worried about you," and then I'm talking to your brother about it, and then you're, like, micromanaging all of that possible conversation of like, "Oh my god, what does she say to him? What does he say to her?" Like, that's to me, that's my mind too, of like, I'm so scared of what might be said about me more than the damage I'm doing to myself. I'm more like, what does that even mean when people are talking about me? Like, that to me is the bigger terror than all of the things that I'm doing to hurt myself. Like, that's so real and so funny. So that's what I loved about it.
Oh, and then I was, like, building a case already against my brother for what he could
Totally.
potentially say to
Yeah.
me. I was like, "Well, fuck him.
Because what look at
He used to
he
have a
was so
drinking
much
problem."
he was so much worse, you know? Like, who is he to? Who is he to say anything to me?
Even
And
though
then she's
nothing
the
had
one that
happened.
yeah, and she's the one that's giving me this Annex anyway, like, she's the one, like and then it's okay. Then it's like, "You know what? Let's just, let's talk about something else, like, it's okay, it's not a big deal." Like, and then it's the great relief when it's like, okay, it's not like an ultimatum.
I think that my experience, and it sounds like your experience to a certain degree, and maybe for a lot of women, it's unique in the way that you can have such a high bottom. Like, it really even though I'd struggled and tried to moderate and tried to quit a million times, it for me, it took really driving drunk. It took a major wake-up call. It took what it took, which is, in the book. I didn't I went back and I talked about a lot of things that could seem like somebody else's bottom. It could seem kind of dire, the many times that I drove drunk, the many times that I, like, whatever, got into things that I wouldn't have gotten into if I hadn't the risky behavior as a teenager and as a person, like, a young person in my 20s. But it took what it took for me to all of a sudden go, "Oh, I guess I can't drink. I guess I'm just not s" to stop the arguing in my head about it, 'cause that's the thing that's so tiresome is when you're like, "But I'm not that bad." Like, giving that's why they call it and I people have a problem with this, but to me, that's why they call it a surrender.
Yeah.
It's freeing to just go,
Yeah.
"Oh, I lost."
It is so freeing to be hands up, like, surrender, white flag. It's so put your arms down, like, stop fighting. That is the best part of it because it's like, "Okay, I gave in." Like, I am not more powerful than alcohol. I'm not more powerful than this desire to be different. So, like, I'm just gonna give into it and actually let go, and that was so freeing, and the idea that I could do that was so freeing.
When you just yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect place to stop. I so appreciate you coming on and being so open and agreeing to do it, and, it always feels like a meeting to me, which
It
is
is, and, I love your book, and I think yeah, it's so real to me the way that you put words to your experience and, coming from, like, the eating thing and all the stuff with your dad. I'm so mad at your dad, by the way. I'm like, it's like I get it so much. Like, I really idolize my father. He's, like, not a comedian, but, I'm very, like, disappointed too. He's and my parents don't have the same experience with alcohol. My mother has a food addiction. I think my dad is a love addict. So it's a little bit different, but I do know, like, that sort of feeling of, like, wanting to sort of be like them, but then being disappointed by them too. It's hard. It's super hard. So I really appreciated your writing.
well, and I just wanna say that I really appreciate which I told you a little bit before we started, but I really appreciate just how outspoken you are about politics, about social issues that you don't have to be outspoken about. It's always a risk, and there's especially for a comedian. And you're just always out there on the front lines of it. I freaking love your TikTok and or your Instagram, wherever you're doing it that comes up in my feed. I'm always like, "Yes, thank God that Margaret
Oh,
Cho is out there, fighting the good fight for all of
thank
the
you.
underdogs."
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, and thanks
Thank
everybody
you.
out there, and I'll see you next week.
Feeling like life is good.